Hello, today I'm going to tell you why I nuked my aquascape. Hello and welcome back everyone to Amra Azul TV. Yes, I am a little bit insane in the membrane. If you look at my tank right now, you obviously notice that I removed a huge bit of rock that used to kind of be the center focal point of my tank right there. A huge piece of Bucani. It was about 16 inches tall, about 14 inches wide, and it was about 6, 7, 8 inches thick. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I made that decision. And I'm sure some of you will just think that this is absolutely crazy that I removed this really massive and arguably magnificent piece of my reef. But I think I have some good reasons, and I'll tell you why. So when I started building my tank, obviously this was my first reef tank, real reef tank, like a real tank with a sump and everything. And I haven't really had a lot of experience aquascaping, and I did kind of I think one of the most common mistakes that people make when they build an aquascape for the first time is they just kind of fill it up with rock. So I picked some really beautiful pieces of Bucani rock and I arranged them in a magnificent, robust configuration where essentially I had rock work covering about 3/4 of the height of my tank. And it looked really kind of impressive, and I liked the look of the rock. I liked how robust it was, how kind of very like stark it looked like. And I placed my colonies, and I guess the second bit of mistake that I did is place the colonies. So mistake number one was that I used a lot of rock, and mistake number two was that the way I mounted my colonies, my SPS colonies, I didn't think ahead. I didn't think about how the colonies were going to grow into the space that I give them, and I didn't have a good plan for moving colonies around to kind of match their needs. So I would just pick a spot in the rock, I would glue my frag down, and then I would just let it grow, and whatever happened. And as I've gained more experience in the hobby, and don't get me wrong, I mean I think my tank looked really good, and the colonies obviously grow well. And I had this about 3 years in, I had this aquascape where I had 4 or 5 really massive acropora colonies. So if you look back at year 3, over in this area, I had a humongous blueberry wine acro that looked beautiful. This rock was dominated by a humongous pink Cadillac colony, and to some extent a bonsai and a blueberry, blue Cali tort colony. And on this side here, I had a huge, like a really massive Miyagi tort. And having big colonies, when I started the hobby, that was the goal, right? You want to have these big, massive colonies. But, I have a small system, and it was fun to see these colonies, but after a while, you get bored of just seeing 4 colonies doing really well, and everything else is just fighting for space. And fragging is the aquascape didn't really facilitate in me being able to frag effectively. Often the colonies kind of grew in shapes, and it was very difficult to kind of control without being able to access them outside of the tank. And it also from a fragging perspective, once you have the pink Cadillac colony got really big, and after selling 10 or 15 frags, nobody really wanted pink Cadillac frags anymore. So you create a large colony, creates way too much supply and very little demand eventually. And as the colonies kind of grew, it shaded a lot of the new acroporas that I was trying to kind of introduce, and it was just very difficult to light things effectively. Another problem with having an aquascape being really high up is that the hotspots. I mentioned this in my top like 6 mistakes videos. Is LEDs naturally have a hotspot, and the hotspot problem gets worse the higher up or the closer you get to the light. So if you have your aquascape like up here, then you're accentuating the hotspot problems that the radions or any point source of lightning has. So lowering the aquascape is actually really good, because as you go lower in the water column, the variance in the light in the par across the tank gets smaller and smaller. So the old aquascape, the colonies there were a few colonies that got really big. There wasn't a lot of room for new colonies to kind of establish. Yeah, you no longer are able to kind of find homes for your frags, because the colonies just get so big and generate so many frags that you can't reasonably kind of like sell them unless you have a retail kind of outfit. And the aquascape made it difficult to light the colonies properly. And because I mounted the frags in a way that prevented me from allowing to kind of take them out and move them, that is to say that my aquascape wasn't very modular, it just made fragging or routine maintenance of colonies very difficult. So I started to kind of re-envision a new aquascape for the tank that was a little bit lower. I started by redoing this boulder. I think that happened about a year ago. And then I redid this boulder maybe 6 months ago. And the plan was to take the middle boulder and what I initially wanted to do was just remove the boulder out, cut like a third of it off and drop it down. So that would have solved my height problem and everything would have been in the same level, but I still would have had two very large colonies, the Cali Tort, the Pink Cadillac and the Bonsai. And I didn't want to have this like mix of really large colonies and small colonies, because again, it would have meant that I would still have to like continuously keep up on the fragging of the Pink Cadillac. I know Boohoo Amoro's complaining about his large colonies, but you know, it is time, and you know, I don't have a frag tank, I don't have places to put these frags, so it always kind of caused an issue for me. You want to cut the coral, but you don't want to throw the coral bits away. And it was just, you also don't want to like constantly have people coming in and just picking up a single frag from your tank. And it was a little bit problematic. And removing the rock, I did that before when I replaced this part of my aquascape, the left boulder here, the right boulder here. And the issue was that in theory, taking the rock out and cutting a third of it and putting it back is possible, but it's a lot of stress, and often you end up like breaking bits. And my worst fear was that when I'm cutting the rock, I'm gonna damage the base in some way that it's not gonna be able to like stand on its own anymore, or I'm gonna cut it on an angle and it's gonna make the colonies, make the boulders look kind of uneven. So I actually just decided to go ahead and remove the rock completely and find a new home for it. So shout out to Patrick if you're watching this. I'm glad that it went to a new home. I did cut a few of the frags out that was on my massive rock. So I have here some Pink Cadillac, a little bit of Cali Tort, a little bit of Bonsai, and I also had Marvin the Martian frag on it, this Reef Raft Pot of Gold and Reef Raft Rainbow Loom that I took out. And so the plan is to then have another smaller structure here that is going to house a few of the frags, and then this Pac-Man colony, which is humongous. Actually, I had no idea. I mean, I knew that the Pac-Man was really large, but when it was in front of this massive boulder, it made it kind of it dwarfed it a little bit. But now that the boulder is gone, you could see how like humongous this colony is. It's really large. The plan is to kind of trim this down a little bit. See, this is what I mean about kind of having a modular aquascape. And this is a colony mounted on a single rock. I could easily take it out of the tank. I could snip it. I could shape it really, really easily. To some extent, this tenuous is also mounted on a single rock. I could pull it out. And all of my new frags, I have this modular system where essentially their colonies are mounted on a frag disc that I could remove, and even if they encrust over it a little bit, I could easily break the little frag disc off and pull the colony out. So all of my new colonies and frags are going to be mounted in this kind of modular system. Same here. All of these frags are mounted on individual rocks with a base that could be removed for easy fragging. So the plan is to have this smaller, nicer structure, and I actually have it curing right now. It hasn't done its cure yet, so I'm going to give it maybe another week. Put that in the back, move this out, trim it a little bit, and trim this piece out, and then effectively kind of restart my tank where everything, it's a 4-year tank, but everything is going to be in the frag stage, and then get to kind of enjoy this new aquascape, which will, I think, be a little bit less robust and definitely a little bit more whimsical. Another thing that I'm looking forward to with this less obtrusive aquascape is that it will allow water to flow more effectively around the tank. So I think the corals are going to experience better flow, more random flow, and flow coming from more different directions than they had before with this massive piece of rock kind of blocking water movement east to west and front to back. So another reason why I wanted to change the aquascape is that obviously my tank was really mature, and it's great having a tank full of these massive colonies. But when you look and find that your tank is really full, often you start thinking about upgrading your tank, right? You want a bigger tank. That's how it works. You have a tank and you fill it up, and once it's full and things are happy, you start thinking about, okay, the next thing, a bigger tank. And I've been thinking about upgrading my tank for a while and getting a bigger tank, but every time I thought about it, I talked myself out of it. Big tanks are, I think they require a little bit more work than smaller tanks. And then eventually, your big tank is also going to get full. And then now what? So, you upgrade again, you upgrade again. And in my case, like maybe I could get another tank with another foot here, but then anything more, and I would have to move this whole setup somewhere to the basement, which is not ideal for me. I want to have it be in the house. I want to in the main floor. I want to be able to enjoy it all the time, and so I didn't want to go that route of going for a bigger tank but having it in a place where I'm not gonna enjoy. So in a way, re-aquascaping the tank and starting from frags again is kind of my way of upgrading. I am changing the tank in a way that still generates a lot of excitement, a lot of possibilities. Change is good. I'm gonna try to realize a new potential for the aquascape and the tank and make it better than it was, without having to kind of invest in new equipment, new livestock, new setup, and moving things. So I feel like that's kind of my way of upgrading my tank without upgrading my tank, if that kind of makes sense. And for you guys on Kenny Death Watch, here is Kenny in my MP10s. So if I have to be careful when I turn on my pump, or else we get Kenny sushi. But yeah, he certainly does have a death wish. Okay guys, so that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I'm a little bit scared to ask you about your thoughts and comments about this. I know most of you will be kind of supportive, but I think there's going to be a few of you that will kind of blast me for taking apart my mature rock and replacing things with frag, because it seems very kind of counterintuitive. But good or bad, please let me know what you think. I really appreciate your comments. And just before I go, let me show you this wonderful PE on this Marvin the Martian. I think it's a camera having a hard time focusing, but there we go. Isn't that beautiful? Yeah, really cool frag. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, and see you when the next aquascape is in.